What are some of the signs that the relationship has reached its limit?
Can you look at your relationship? Is how much joy is in this relationship?
What does the word situationship mean?
There's factors that are good around this, what situationship to me feels like flexibility in relationships.
Has social media created performative love where couples look perfect online but actually disconnected offline?
I see it with my own kids who are all teenagers. This indoctrination with social media, like they need it for some belonging. That's the choice we made as a family.
In this age of DMs and constant connectivity, what is the meaning of emotional cheating and how do you compare it to physical cheating?
I think historically, emotional cheating has been considered not that bad.
How does financial stress and career pressure affect someone's relationship today?
If you can lead that discussion with the emotionality first, curiosity, compassion, questions. How are you feeling in your career these days? Does it feel like this is something you want to continue with? Let's go to the park and talk about how things are going.
Hi, I'm Manish Kapoor, tuning in from Canada, and I'm really glad you're here. This is where we sit down with some amazing minds, leaders, creators, and change makers to talk about the things that matter. Every episode is a chance to learn something new, get inspired, or just hear a fresh take. So let's get into it.
Today on the Kapoor Podcast, we are joined by Angie Holstein, registered psychotherapist and founder of Shanti Psychotherapy. Angie has years of experience helping individuals, couples, and families navigate the complex landscape of modern relationships. Her work focuses on emotional awareness, healing past wounds, and building communication skills that create healthier, stronger connections. In this episode, Angie shares practical tools and powerful insights on how to manage relationships in today's fast-paced, highly digital world. Whether you're single, dating, or married, you'll walk away with strategies you can use immediately. If you enjoy this conversation, please leave a comment, follow us on all platforms, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support really helps us bring more meaningful conversations your way. Hi Angie, welcome to the Kapoor Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Manish.
Yeah, today's conversation is about relationship. I think it's going to bring a lot of valuable insight. So let's get started. So tell me, what is Shanti Psychotherapy and what kind of services do you offer?
Thanks for asking that. Shanti has a little bit of a story. So I've been a social worker and psychotherapist for 25 years. And part of, my own experience growing up first gen, and my parents were immigrants from India, and growing up here, trying to acclimatize, and then falling into this career, taught me a lot about the different needs that we have within our own cultures. And I saw a deficit in the system when I was working and did a lot of effort and work to try to shift some of that, as well as other folks who are like-minded. And I just one day, about 4 or 5 years ago, in some of the media and, the experiences around international students, I decided to start a practice with other like-minded people. At that time, when it first started, was really focused on South Asian mental health and the prevention of mental illness and suicide prevention for international students.
Okay.
So my dad was actually an international student in the 60s. And, I grew up with a lot of the, experiences of migration, the struggles of my family, and what it was like growing up. So Shanti really, now which has, evolved into cultural affinity for many cultures, in addition to South Asian, East Asian, all cultures, in multi-languages. It really was and is the type of resource that I wish my own family had growing up. Okay. And that's what we strive to do.
Perfect. And do you have one location or do you have multiple locations?
So we've grown. We originally started in the East End of Toronto, so that's where the main clinic is. And then we have additional locations in Etobicoke and Pickering, and now soon to be in Niagara, trying to serve, broader populations, diverse folks that are also outside of the GTA where there's limited resources. So trying to help those folks access, reasonably priced and reasonable cost to therapy, as well as with therapists from their own culture, their own language. Mm-hmm. Maybe even we try to do matching around lived experience. So for example, matching someone who has experienced migration with a clinician who has also experienced migration, trying to do that affinity matching as much as possible.
Okay, and what are the main services you offer?
So we're seeing children, youth, adults, couples, and families. And we also do, offering of group work. We go out in the community. So what's different about our clinic is more of a grassroots focus. So we have, umbrellas of training so we can go out and support medical professionals, social workers on how to engage in culturally relevant therapy and assessment. So for example, if from my community, South Asians, we present in the mental health system or medical system first with, I've got a stomach ache, IBS, chronic headaches. And that's how we engage around mental health issues, which can be kind of the symptomology of anxiety or depression.
Okay.
So we do that. And, what we treat is a lot of, family work, relationship work, anxiety, depression, really anything that, folks are struggling with. And we're seeing a lot more struggles since the pandemic as well.
For sure. And then most of your clients, do you see them personally, or is it like a video call or over Zoom? How do you meet with them?
So we do both. We have the option of in-person, and we have the option for most clinicians are offering virtual as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about relationships. Okay. So in today's world, what does a healthy, securely attached relationship look like?
Well, it's going to look different for, different folks based on, where they grew up, their families of origin, their culture, their socioeconomics, where they live currently. There's so many different factors. I like the language that you're using, Manish, around a healthy attached relationship. Because I think, when we look at the influence of social media and media in general, there's a lot of push towards perfectionism, right? Being the perfect couple, having the perfect relationship. And we never quite meet those parameters, especially when we look at 1D versus 3D, which is the reality of being in the trenches of a relationship, especially when we look at long-term relationships. And so when we look at relationships, what is the platform that creates health within a couple? If we look at, kind of traditional couples. So attachment, that sense of bonding, attachment is actually a neurobiological system. Literally, our brains connected to our bodies.
Right.
And it's grown in childhood. So based on our childhood, it's going to predict what kind of adult relationships we have based on what kind of attachment, our sense of, intimacy, our tolerance for intimacy, our tolerance and ability to bond with another, to feel safe, to feel that the world and relationships are predictable and consistent. So if we use, replace the language of attachment with bonding, the first piece in a healthy relationship is the relationship you have with yourself. So when we come together, me in a relationship with my partner, I'm bringing all of my attachment, my bonding history, my family history, my generational history to that relationship. The other is also, right? So if we sort of draw a Venn diagram, here's me, here's my partner, and crossing over, we've got that subsection in the middle from which is the platform that we build our life together or a period of our life together.
So if someone's happy with themselves, they can bring that happiness into the relationship.
That's right.
And what if they're not happy with themselves and they're getting into a relationship? What happens then?
Which is, a lot of people's life work. This happiness spectrum is such a spectrum because there's different times in life that we feel, in a different level of self-worth or self-esteem. And it's important to strive towards that in your adult life because it affects all kinds of relationships. There are romantic relationships, our relationships with our children, our coworkers, with our neighbors. And so you can hear what I'm trying to really articulate is that the platform from which a healthy relationship is the health within yourself. And then we look at that subsection in the middle of our Venn diagram that says, okay, how do we create together a healthy, secure bond? And moving from there, then we look at kind of all the domains such as intimacy, finances, children, shared values. Communication is really key. How we engage in conflict. You're going to hear a lot from me today around conflict and repair.
Okay.
And so, there's so many components to a healthy, secure relationship. The first pieces of that, to be able to work out any of those domains, is actually curiosity and compassion. Are we willing to be curious, compassionate, and vulnerable? And those are the factors that really kind of chip away these ideas, especially for couples today, what we see around social media of the perfect couple, the perfect relationship. No one's ever going to get there.
Okay. So relationships generally seem much harder these days. What societal or generational shifts do you think have contributed to this?
It's an interesting way to ask that, actually, when you say they're harder these days.
Okay.
I wonder if we're also looking at different levels of difficulty. When we look at sort of our parents' generation, there were difficulties there that were less known about, right? There was more stigma and secrecy around the challenges in relationships.
And there were a lot more compromises at that time as well, right? So I think that is shifting a little bit.
When we look at sort of individualism, like where we're living right now, we're in Canada, right? So we look at kind of that shift from collectivism, from cultures, BIPOC cultures, into Western ideology, which is, gives us, both the gift of individualism, and there's also challenges that it brings to relationships.
Right.
So again, I'm going to go back to social media. I know I didn't have that growing up.
Yeah.
What my templates was, I'm a kid from the 70s. So, it was Disney movies, or my media was, my deep love for the 80s movies, right? Like Breakfast Club and Some Kind of Wonderful. And these movies that really kind of told me as a girl that my role, my pursuit was one long-term relationship. That's not what we're dealing with Gen Z now, since the, incorporation of social media and the medias that we see from, Netflix to, podcasts to, there's just so much more information around the nature of relationships. So with that brings complexity.
I see. Okay. So when emotions run high, right, why do couples run away instead of communicating better with one another?
So I think let's go back to that Venn diagram, right? Me as a person, I'm coming into the relationship with my wiring, my attachment system, my ideology and value system. Like, there's so many components that make up me and my idea of a relationship. The same for my partner. So when we look at that bonding, right, each of us have a system inside of us to which we deal with conflict or stress. So let's take stress. Let's not even go into conflict at this point. If we just take those stressors that we experience in a couple, so let's take a story of, a couple who's dealing with, in-laws.
Okay.
For example, this is a stressor, even with the most, wonderful in-laws, because they're different than how we grew up, even if they're coming from the same culture.
Okay.
So, each person in their constellation of their body is a sense and a system of defenses. So how I deal with stress, I'm more, anxiously wired. So if there's something stressful going on, I want to talk and talk and talk and figure it out, because my body can't rest in that distress. For somebody, say my partner, who is more on the other end of the attachment spectrum, who's, more avoidant, they want to leave and sort of deal with conflict in their own space and then come back, there's where the clash can come. right? Mine is to go in and fight and figure it out. And his might be to like, let's avoid this. It's going to cause disruption. I can't take it.
So everyone deals differently.
Yes. And knowing that, how do we know how we're defensively wired? It's not like we're taught that in school. Nobody says, let's, sit down and figure out how your body responds to stress. We sort of muddle through it, typically in our adult relationships where a lot of these defenses really get, shone light on because we're dealing with stressors like kids. Like what do you care about more than your kids? Money, right? All aspects of what make us feel safe. So the stressors can get really high in relationships, and you're going to find there's that person that wants to fight more. There's going to be that person likely that wants to flee, right? So fight, flight, and freeze.
So if there's someone, or how should someone deal with a partner who always shuts or does not want to have these emotional conversations?
Well, it's an interesting way of asking that question, right? So I would reframe it to how do we deal with that?
Okay.
And I think that's often what happens is for somebody who has a partner that tends to be on the flee spectrum, right? They're going to run when there is conflict. They're going to go, let's not talk about this now. Let's just have a good night. And it doesn't mean they don't care. It means that they're trying to manage what's going on inside their bodies.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like when you are, have you ever done sports, Manish?
No, lots.
Lots. Give me a sport that you've done.
I still play cricket.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So you had to train to do cricket, to be able to participate in a team, right?
Yeah.
So you don't practice your new strategies for cricket to be a good team player when you're in the middle of the final tournament.
Right.
When are we talking about? When are you training for that? For those strategies, you're training in the downtime.
I see.
So the greatest thing that you can do for yourselves as a couple is actually start to talk about conflict patterns when you're not in the conflict. So if somebody is in that space of fleeing and the partner is like, okay, what do I do? Don't chase, actually.
Okay.
Because if we do that, we set a stage in relationships that it's that it's one person's responsibility to figure that out. We want a we system here. Remember that Venn diagram? Both people are coming into that circle. So we don't want to perpetuate and enable that within the relationship. One person is usually going to have to raise the flag to say, you know what, this is what I'm noticing. When we're in conflict, I feel that you run away and it makes me really anxious and I want to chase you. And I think that's hard for you. How can we figure out together and negotiate? This is one of those negotiations in that third space of how do we deal with conflict? Let's learn about that together. Let's read a book on figuring out our attachment styles. Maybe let's go for 4 or 5 sessions of therapy.
Okay.
Or talk to, a close friend or someone who's a mentor to start to help us bring the heat down so that we can have healthy conflict. Because a relationship without conflict often is a red flag. We are going to experience stress. We're going to experience conflict.
For sure.
How do we deal with that together? You got to figure that out together. It's not one person's job.
Okay.
It's both.
That's good to know. Okay, so when trust is broken, say there's infidelity or a betrayal, what can be done to rebuild it?
It's a good question, actually. And it's one of the things that we see most commonly in the couples work. And I think it goes back to some of those, our earlier conversation around just the challenges that are there for couples. And one of those challenges, I think, when we look at dating apps, we look at social media, we just have so much more access. Like we look at our parents' generation, how did infidelity occur? Well, it occurred in the domains that there was access, work, right? A friend circle, a neighbor.
Yeah.
Now, it's just like the world is at our feet.
Right.
So, first of all, I like when we're looking at healthy attachments in couples and relationships, you're going to hear me repeat and a lot of my dialogue is around prevention.
Okay.
Right? So the first piece is around prevention and looking at how do we communicate as a couple when things are not feeling safe and connected.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to feel a longing for someone else. That's a critical piece of communication.
But no one who's having that feeling is going to let the other person know that.
Why not?
Yeah?
Let's start.
Okay.
Right? When we look at, so it doesn't mean that that people don't leave a relationship or may engage with another person, have an affair.
Mm-hmm.
It's that recognizing that there's an opportunity in the relationship to address that.
Okay.
Because infidelity is a betrayal trauma. At the end of the day, no matter what those factors were that led the relationship to have a symptom, infidelity is a symptom of a relationship or someone's own internal struggles or personality. It's preventable and we need to take that kind of betrayal seriously because the harm to the other person is significant.
What could be some of the symptoms?
Well, disconnection,
Okay.
depression, for example. One of the baselines that we see in clinical practice in couples where there is infidelity, we often find a depressed person, an overly anxious person, a person that feels alone, right? So when we look at symptoms, like how's the relationship going? What was the quality of the relationship before the infidelity? What needed to be addressed and what was missing? That's all those components. When we do that work with a couple in therapy, we're going back to do an anatomy on what was happening in the relationship, what precipitated, what came before that affair, that time of infidelity. And does the relationship, both parties want to engage in healing some of that, learning some skills to come together and do some of that good communication. Because if you look at the longitudinal research of relationships, we see different periods of time in a long-term relationship where there's higher relationship satisfaction and lower relationship satisfaction.
Okay.
When we're raising kids, there's vulnerabilities for infidelity. Right? In the older years, when there is the empty nest, again, we have certain risk factors that start to occur in these longer-term relationships. So what if a couple, either before or after an occurrence of infidelity, they're learning those communication skills then to minimize and mitigate the intense trauma that comes from that type of betrayal? So I know that didn't answer fully your question, but I'm going to take us back a bit because I want folks to really understand that there's things that we can do and we have a responsibility to do when we start to have those feelings.
Okay.
And the other piece that's really important is for the person who has engaged in infidelity to know that, there's a lot of research in the life cycle of a long-term relationship where it's normal to feel attraction, to feel a spark with another person. So Esther Perel, this would be a great resource for your readers. I am a big fan of Esther Perel because I think she really normalized for men and women and all genders and all, any relationship, whether, heteronormative to folks in same-sex relationships, that, again, in a long-term relationship, there are patterns of satisfaction. And she has written this book called Mating in Captivity, groundbreaking book. And in her book, she describes that monogamy is actually not part of us as mammalians. It's not part of being human because it's natural to feel attraction and to feel interested in other people. Our brains seek novelty, right? That's why do we make a new friend or a new acquaintance?
Yeah.
Right? That's satisfying. It's part of our need for connection. So she really normalizes that in her book around, think of your relationship when it's starting as Christmas morning when you're opening a new present, right? You're unwrapping.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I've got this new present. You're unwrapping it. You're seeing what's inside, and then you're engaging with what's inside. And it's normal for your interest to wane, to change. And so what she talks about as the keys around long-term, successful relationships is the attachment to a life partner. and it will change. So normalizing that change. So if you are feeling feelings for another person, let's say often that occurs in the 40s for women and in the 50s for men, and it can occur really at any age spectrum, that don't panic.
Okay.
It's not about shame and judgment. It's about a chance to, again, you're going to hear me keep repeating the values of being curious and compassionate with our partners and ourselves. So can you get curious? What's happening in my relationship? And what's happening in this attraction to another person? And I think Esther Perel's research and many others, and her book really talks about normalizing that it's also okay for a chapter to end.
Okay.
Right? So before you engage in a betrayal, you've done this work to say, is my relationship the relationship I want at this stage? Because it's okay to change. It's okay to feel differently. How we do that, how we mitigate and manage those feelings, there's those choices, right? Because we want to mitigate the pain that we have, we could cause to someone that we loved, who was that present, who was that long-term partner at some point. Now, once an infidelity occurs, couples can repair from that. When I was a teenager, I would be like, if he cheated on me, that would be the end. No more. And that's an okay perspective, actually, because that is within your own value system. Remember, we talked about getting to know yourself. Here's one of those things. What are deal breakers for you? For me, addiction and substance use are absolute deal breakers for me.
Okay.
I know that about myself. And I've seen many relationships be able to recover from infidelity. But again, it requires this pre-work. Let's go back and look at what was happening in our relationship, and are both parties willing to do that? And then to renegotiate a healthier relationship moving forward, because trust has been broken. So the person who has experienced trauma, and betrayal is a trauma, they need a lot of support to heal from that. With their partner is the best option. And also for the partner to know that who has, engaged in infidelity, that person's going to need time to rebuild trust and safety and consistency. That's those traits that we talked about at the beginning around the attachment and the bonding. That has to be re-secured, right, with a commitment not to do that again. So all of that needs, I say, professional help. I think that's really hard to do alone for a couple, but it's definitely possible.
Now, in your experience, have you seen couples mostly breaking up, or there are times where they are ready to work when there has been a betrayal?
I've seen both.
Both?
And I think that's why it's good. When I say I've seen both, it's because when you get support for that, both options are there. And support means that you can have a healthy ending or a new healthy beginning. So either reconciling and doing the work, meaning both people doing the work, to reconcile that relationship and what happened and how to heal from that and create a new pathway, or to engage in a healthy ending. Because healthy endings after infidelity are critically important for both people. The person committing the infidelity tends to feel a lot of shame, defensiveness, judgment, and the person who has had the infidelity upon them are feeling a lot of low self-worth and shame connects the two. So you need to deal with that in order to move on, so that you're not creating those same patterns in another relationship. Infidelity is a symptom of something in yourself and in the relationship.
Okay. This episode is sponsored by Kapoor Law Firm, your trusted real estate law firm serving all of Ontario. Whether you're buying, selling, or refinancing a home or business, their expert team can guide you through every step. And here's a bonus for our listeners. Subscribers to this show can receive a one-time coupon for their upcoming closing. Visit thekapoorpodcast.com to claim yours. Now, what are some of the signs that the relationship has reached its limit?
So I think that's an important question. We get asked that question a lot. And, to give you some concrete answers, I think if we look at, we see the scales of justice. If we can picture that kind of weighing scale, old school.
Yeah.
Can you look at your relationship when you're assessing this? Can you look at your relationship is how are these scales tipped? How much joy is in this relationship? Is it higher in the scale, right?
Yeah.
And how much are you spent in stress, conflict, disconnection?
Yeah.
And so part of it is an actual, again, going back and doing an anatomy.
Okay.
How much joy does this relationship bring me? Because a lot of times people can feel closeness based on, remember that Venn diagram?
Yeah.
People can come from families or, their generational traumas, meaning what happened to them, what happened to their families, where their comfort zone is conflict. And so people can feel like if we're fighting, we're close. If we're working things out all the time, we're close. If it's a problem relationship, that's what you're going to get. And do you want that for yourself? So when you're looking at, take a look at, see what levels of toxicity are in this relationship. Do a calculation of joy, right? So if you're thinking about disconnection, the same thing. Can you start to do an assessment for yourself on how much of our connection is there on the day-to-day? How lonely do I feel? The other pieces I think that's really important to look at is shared values.
Okay.
Because, again, going back to Esther Perel's research and her, messaging is that, people change over time and our value systems can change. A partner can be really sort of grassroots and, interested in charity work and community. People can change into, a more of a focus on creating generational wealth. That's okay, actually.
Do they do this assessment themselves, or do they hire someone to make sure that what they're assessing is correct and how to move forward?
Ideally, I think you start with yourself.
Okay.
Get reading. Google. Look at articles from Psychology Today. I'm feeling disconnected in my relationship. I'm thinking about ending in my relationship. Get informed.
I see.
Follow that feeling. Remember curiosity and compassion? Get curious, but be compassionate with yourself as you're doing that.
Okay.
And getting support, we have a lot of folks that reach out to us because they're looking for support to say, I think I'm feeling like I need to end my relationship. And therapy is just a mirror, right? Someone to help you not say what you need to do, but to help you get curious and explore in a safe and compassionate way. Because depending on your value system, your culture, the messages that have been learned, literally downloaded into our brains, for some people, I know in my culture as a South Asian woman, I've been downloaded with, this is my partner for life. That's it. Doesn't mean that I espouse to that anymore. I've done some learning and unlearning. But for some people, it is the most threatening, scary experience of their life to even consider or have that feeling. And those folks need a lot of support to be able to move through that problem solving around what to do. First the assessment and then problem solving what to do.
I see. Okay. How can past or childhood trauma affect someone's relationship today?
That's what we're talking about. That's such a great question. It's, I'm going to keep going back, like Venn diagram, all of us, like every single, and as a mom, like I'm a mom of 3 kids, Manish, and I heard that you have kids too, right?
2 daughters, yeah.
2 daughters, right? And the last thing we want to consider for our children is that they're going to experience trauma. If we can approach life knowing that there's things in life that are going to occur to us that are going to fall under the big T types of traumas, which are what we, for lack of better language, big T means life-threatening, earthquakes, violence, genocide, to the smaller T traumas, which are the ones that are not life-threatening but the most impactful. And that's where those relational traumas exist. And even us as the best intentioned parents, right? We would never intentionally want to harm our children, but children and young adults collect traumas across their childhood, right? It's just, if we can look at that, every single person is walking on earth with some type of trauma. And in some cultures, like in our culture, Manish, we're both of Indian descent.
Yeah.
We know that we have a lot of intergenerational trauma. We're not even a century away from partition.
Yeah.
Not even 1 century. And we know from epigenetics, I'm going to nerd out here for a sec. Epigenetics tells us that we're actually carrying trauma genetics 3 generations down. So we know that our children's generation, we know for us, genetically, we are carrying that. So we look at the contributors of our own healthy attachment and bonding with ourselves, a healthy mind and body. And intergenerational trauma is a contributing factor of health. It's a risk factor.
Okay.
So we look at other constellations. What was our socioeconomic status growing up? Were we in survival mode? Most, BIPOC folks, most immigrants, they're coming with a lot of families that are surviving and just trying to do their best. Like if I think about taking my child to India and trying to raise my kid there, I can't even imagine what it's like for folks that are coming from other countries. Sure. Right? So the impact is there. The imprinting occurs for the children, even with the most loving and good parents.
Okay.
So we're looking at a number of factors. Then we're looking at just temperament. Like, how am I wired? Right? I'm born like this. I'm an eldest daughter in an immigrant family. I got my own stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so we look at neighborhoods. What was school years like? What were the resiliency factors? There's so many things that we bring to a relationship, and unhealed, unresolved, generational, and accumulated trauma is part of what we bring to that middle third space in the relationship.
Okay.
And so it impacts, there's many symptoms of that. So one of the ones we see is the attachment, the ability to bond in a safe way with a partner.
Okay.
So I might be more anxious, or I might be avoidant of conflict or struggles, and I might disconnect from my partner because that's how I was raised, because I was raised in survival. So it's really important for a healthy future relationship, and as an adult, and I say this to teens and the emerging adult stage, because they're eager to deal with their generational trauma.
Yeah.
We just did a conference last year with TAM Youth and Our Kids' Health, and the youth asked for, how do we deal with generational trauma? Okay. They know way more than we do from our gen.
Okay.
So if we can deal with that, those risk factors, either coming into the relationship and or together in the relationship, that's where we look at healthy longevity for relationships. Otherwise, unresolved trauma, unresolved intergenerational trauma, even an awareness of that is, a percolating symptom. It's like a scab in a relationship that keeps getting knocked and hurt when stress comes up.
And what are some of the ways to deal with it?
So learning about generational trauma.
Okay.
Right? Sometimes I suggest to folks, that's what we did at the TAM conference. Let's just go through a little bit of our family history.
Okay.
So that we can look at generational gifts. We need to look at the generational gifts. And what are the generational traumas?
Okay.
What did my grandparents, parents, and me experience? And if we're looking at, let's say, a lineage of anxiety, like for South Asians, it's a lineage of anxiety and perfectionism and overachieving and overfunctioning. Because when we look back generationally, and this is my own work that I had to do, well, my grandparents and our families lived in survival. We had to be the perfect Indians or you could die under the British Raj. Well, that's genetically coming down. So I got to learn. I got to learn about anxiety. I need to learn about, our tendencies to, survive in relationships versus thrive. I need to learn about attachment. What is this system in my body? So that once you have more awareness, and that's where that curiosity comes from, and then the compassion, learn about compassion, self-compassion and compassion to others. What is this? It is a neurological, biological need. And we're not taught that. In fact, in my culture, I grew up with sort of, if I got 98%, it was like, where'd you lose the 2%? Right? That's how I grew up. It didn't mean my parents were bad. It meant that they were worried that I would starve in the street. Right. It came from love. I didn't know it then. So that's an example. I'm sharing actually an example of something I had to resolve within myself, within that generational trauma. Because Dad was a poor kid from Calcutta, where education saved his life, and was pushing that on me.
Right.
And I value that. That's a gift.
Yeah, because he wanted you to do better than him.
Yeah,
So,
he wanted me to be safe. The
For
message
sure.
actually of Where'd You Lose the 2% was that I love you so much. I don't want you to starve. I want you to be safe.
Right.
But I didn't know it then. Right? So if fast forward to a relationship when my partner says, oh, like, hey, you didn't do this, and I get inflamed, you're just another person that I'm letting down. Well, I've resolved some of that. So I can hear that and experience it in my body in a very different way. That's what I mean about how do we get to that point.
I see how you connected that. Yeah, that's
Right?
amazing. Yeah, perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so we hear a lot about this word healing era these days. What is it?
There's so many different interpretations of it. Can I ask you what you interpret it as?
I don't know, like someone who wants to disconnect and heal or come out of some sort of a situation. Is that what it means?
I really don't know what it means. I've heard it. I liked it on when you asked me that, because there's so many different interpretations, because some people look at it with a feeling of negativity. I think it depends on the kind of glasses you're wearing. Because there's some folks that are frustrated with what feels like overindulgence of generations that don't feel familiar. Like I've heard, Gen Z is so focused on self-improvement and health and just this constant digestion of perfectionism. And there may be truth to that. I think there's no exact right answer.
Yeah.
But I think that there is this feeling that there is a healing era of either overindulgence, and on the other side, which is probably more the side that I lean towards, was that when we know better, we can do better and we can feel better. So I think what we see now is the decreasing in stigma. And again, that's varied across cultures. That's a very cross-cultural kind of piece, because the healing era is very Western ideology as well.
Okay.
And we look at healing era, well, that's been in our culture. Like, again, I'll go back to South Asians. We look at East Asians. There, and so many other cultures, look at our indigenous folks. Healing era has been embedded in the culture for centuries, right? So we have these ways. I think what we're seeing, healing era, is more reflective of just the amount of consumption, right? The amount of information that's out there. And my feeling around it is take what works for you. If you're on the course of healing intergenerational traumas or your own trauma, or just to feel better, please go for it. Because, when we do that work and we start to shift into, like when we look at sort of healing from childhood, healing things within our bodies, we make it better for the next generation. So because, like I said, with research, epigenetics says if you kind of imagine a water glass, each generation is pouring into the next generation what's unhealed and unresolved. So what are we going to do to dilute that? We're going to have to heal. Some cycle breaker is going to have to take those steps in the family lineage to say, I'm going to do things a little bit different while keeping those generational gifts. And if the healing era and more dissemination of health information helps, go for it.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay. And then that's fine. Now, what does the word situationship mean?
You're coming up with a lot of good media terms
Yeah,
here.
because that's what we've been hearing these days, right?
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I'm 50 years old, so some of
Yeah.
these terms, like
I didn't grow up with this word, so
Right?
Yeah.
And I actually find them quite creative. Like there's a lot of creativity to this generation around these new terminologies around relationships.
yeah.
And I think what we're seeing is, if we look at kind of 60s, 70s, 80s, we were looking at a lot of racial tension. We were looking at feminism, the change in, the family and the structure for women. And could situationship also be, an offshoot of that? Is that some of the tailwind of where we get these kind of terms and the redefining of relationships? So I think there's factors that are good around this, what situationship to me feels like flexibility in relationships. So we could go all the way from sort of the, literature from like around polyamorous relationships to the ethical slut, which is like a feminist writing of open relationships, to those, more traditional, all the way the spectrum across to more traditional relationships. And I think this generation is seeing the spectrum. Whereas when I grew up, it was when you finish school, when you finish your master's, when you get married, when you have kids, when you have a job, right? It was the when-then generation.
Yeah.
We don't have that when-then generation so much anymore. And I think socials has really given a chance for folks to really kind of consider what kind of relationship they want. So situationship, where we look at more Gen Z, where, they don't quite commit to a relationship that's more traditional.
And why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think that, again, there's things that are good about that. I think I really espouse to the growing into a relationship before like a quick commitment. I think it's good to get to know yourself, get to know each other, and then craft that third space that we've been talking about.
Okay.
So slow and steady is my own personal and clinical kind of guidance to folks. I also think that it's a form of avoidance. I think that situationship and sort of that's, keeping yourself a little bit distanced from a commitment is a way of protecting yourself from being vulnerable. And if we look at social media, like I call it the 1D, it's one-dimensional. You sitting in front of me right now is three-dimensional. You're a whole constellation of a person with a tribe around you and your own personal experiences. But I don't see that if I'm seeing you on social media.
I see.
So when you talked about the image, right, of the perfect couple, that's what we were talking about earlier, I think that there's a lot of pressure for people, and young people in particular, to have these really dynamic, perfect relationships. So if I have this pressure and this expectation of a perfect relationship, well, committing to that and failing is really threatening. And I think that we see a lot of that we see a lot of perfectionism coming to us clinically as well in our practice. And I think socials has a big part of that.
Okay.
Right? So it's easier to stay on, it might be safer. I shouldn't say easier, I'm going to say safer to kind of stay on the fence and stay away from that so that there isn't that feeling of failing and being super vulnerable. So I don't look at situationship as good or bad. I think it's really about the person getting curious within themselves.
Okay.
Can you ask yourself, if you're engaged in situationships, is there any part of you that's avoiding vulnerability? What is your value system? Maybe your value system is more towards what I've learned is that Esther Perel kind of mandate of there can be chapters. And I'm in a long-term, my partner and I have been together for 25 years, and I still espouse to chapters. But it's about knowing thyself.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Perfect. And now with these dating apps giving unlimited choices, is love more about options than real deep connection?
I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, folks are looking for love. I mean, loneliness is an epidemic. And I think that was really highlighted in the pandemic, the experience of loneliness. And there's so much interesting research about that, about how loneliness is actually connected to cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
So I think people will always be searching for love. I think that there's complications and it's harder.
Yeah.
Some of my family members, my friends or friends that are in, second relationships, the dating apps are really overwhelming because, again, they're 1D.
Yeah.
It's just a 1D evaluation.
Right.
And I think it's scarier to meet people sort of more organically. And so one isn't better than the other. It's that I feel like that on Netflix. Like there's so much choice that I end up just watching a rerun of something that I already saw because I feel overwhelmed by those choices. So I do think there is more complication in the search for love because just the amount that's out there. And I think it also contributes to FOMO, like the fear of missing out for people, that if I sort of, like, speaking of situationships, right? Like what would it mean for me if I'm in a committed relationship, and what I might be missing? Right? Is it just another dirty pile of laundry with somebody else, or is it grass greener somewhere else? And that's a natural, again, going back to Esther Perel, it's a natural human, response to be curious and interested in other people. So I think there's a whole host of I'm touching on this much. There's a whole host of contributing factors that make love hard and complicated these days.
So on that note, has social media created performative love where couples look perfect online but actually disconnected offline?
I think we see that in celebrity life. I think absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that there's, the the reality shows, that might show, a couple, like a celebrity couple that's argues, and this, I don't even think the reality show showing conflict is real. I think there's so much on social media and just entertainment media that contributes to unrealistic expectations in relationships. That's what I say to folks, like, get in your body, get in your own mind, be critical in your thinking and evaluation and what you want. And it's so hard with our young people, because I see it with my own kids who are all teenagers, this indoctrination with social media, like they need it for some belonging. That's the choice we made as a family. And at the same time, there's so much being downloaded that I can't control as a parent, and it's shaping their ideology of relationships. So what can I counter with? I can try to show my kids, my husband and my loving relationship that has conflict and repairs, right? Those kind of base, like the reality of relationship. We talk about relationships. If Dad and I have something that we disagree about, right now it's about painting a room, and it becomes a family discussion. Well, you know what? It's helping kids understand and see that there's negotiation. Yeah. Right? That there is a difference of ideologies and what we want, and what does compromise look like? Because what you're going to see on TV is and social media is very different.
Right. People put out the best parts of themselves.
Yeah, like I love David and Victoria Beckham. I've always loved David Beckham, and I love the Spice Girls. So I follow them on socials. Yeah. And I look at it with some entertainment. Right. Like I know that Victoria Beckham and David Beckham have conflict that we don't see. And we don't see those parts of their relationship. So let's, just keep that in mind when we're sort of idealizing certain couples.
Be realistic.
Be realistic.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll do a couple of myth or fact questions. Let me know, okay? So myth or fact, if a relationship is healthy, it should be easy all the time.
Absolute myth.
Okay.
Absolute myth. If I can share a little story.
Absolutely.
And I think this is one of the, what perfectionism looked like in some of the, like if we look at the media of the 50s and 60s, where, it showed kind of the perfect family, perfectly groomed wife, and all that kind of sugar and spice and everything nice back then. Mm-hmm. And it gave an impression that we should never have conflict. So that if there is conflict or stressors, arguments, then it means something's wrong and we're not healthy. When actually the research, so John Gottman did 25-year longitudinal studies.
Okay.
Amazing research. And he could predict which couples would stay together and which couples would end up separating. And can you guess which couples ended up separating?
The ones who did not fight.
The couples that stayed together were actually the ones that could engage in healthy conflict and repair. So one of his key components of relationships is that you can repair. And that if you're not having some sort of conflict or some sort of disagreements or variance, that someone is under-functioning, avoiding, not bringing in their true authentic self. And so it's really important not to espouse to being the perfect, healthy couple who never argues. All of that falls under myth.
Okay, perfect. Next one, myth or fact, taking breaks in a relationship always means the couple is falling apart.
Definitely myth.
Okay.
So it's so all or nothing, right? When we looked at that going back to each person is bringing their own histories, themselves, their authentic self, where they are. And people need things at different times. So we can never sort of generalize and say, okay, for sure, if they separate or, they are taking a break or taking some space, that means the relationship is over. Because taking space to be in yourself, to reevaluate yourself, to get healthy, to heal, to just be out of a relationship is okay. And, there's this concept of separated but connected.
Okay.
That you can be separated from someone and there can still be a connection, right? That there's a friendship there. There's many other parts to the relationship in addition to that romantic commitment. And so, I hear that with people, like sort of in the gossipy realm, like, oh, they're not living together right now, or, oh, they're not dating, or they're separated right now. And, it's, if we can approach that without judgment, just recognizing that people take, they have different needs at different times, and that it's possible that it is leading towards a separation and an ending, and it's possible that it's just a little time and space in that relationship to recoup and use that as a platform to something else that's better for them. So much about that is judgment when we're looking at that from the outside.
Okay. We are also proud to be sponsored by Kapoor Vastralaya, with locations in Mississauga, Ontario, Surrey, British Columbia, and Fremont, California. For the finest selection of ethnic Indian clothing, visit your nearest store and explore their beautiful collection. And just for our subscribers, you can get a one-time discount coupon by visiting thekapoorpodcast.com and filling out the form. Many relationships, modern relationships, are failing. Is it because people are chasing dopamine hits and avoiding real connection?
I don't think so. I think it's hard to actually figure out. It's been really hard to figure out trends in relationship quality, like in both U.S. So when I look at the U.S. data and looking at the Canadian data, part of it, I think, is what we were talking about earlier around that situationship and the spectrum of relationships. Because even in countries like India, I went to India last two years ago, and, hearing from my family that many couples in major, bigger cities are actually choosing to live together, to not have children, to not get married.
Yeah, it's DINK, double income, no kids.
There you go.
That's the new concept.
That's right.
Yeah.
And these are great choices. I love that this generation has so much more fluidity than sort of even looking back at our generation when there was sort of more of a, focus on getting married and staying married to the same person. So when we look at the data, it's really skewed. When we're still looking at about a 33% divorce rate in Canada, which is actually lower than the 50% that was trending kind of in the decades, a decade before. It's skewed also because not everyone is getting married legally. So this research is based on what's available from the court systems.
Legally married.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think there's more complications in modern society for relationships. I think there's stressors that take, the connection. There's so many ways for us to be disembodied and disconnected from our partners. Even the phone, like one of the things we hear about the most in couples work is that my partner's just always on his phone or her phone. That disconnection, there's this literal neurological, as you said, a dopamine hit to get onto that phone, scroll or play a video game or whatever that gives us that versus putting that down and getting that dopamine hit from our partners. So it doesn't mean that we're weak or bad. It's that, like, to really validate the amount of pull to get disconnected is so much more these days. And we're also over-functioning as a society. The economy has been really hard. We've gone through a pandemic. Like, we're just a sneeze away from a pandemic.
Yeah.
This literally just
last
years
2-3
ago.
years have been really tough.
So, that's why I say it's not only socials, but there's so many things that make it difficult. And also, the history of, I think about my parents' generation, where there was that opportunity to create this generational wealth. That's not, what's happening with interest rates and mortgages and housing the cost of education and opportunities, AI. Like families and couples are dealing with a lot of stressors that create the body system and the relationship system to be in survival mode instead of like being mode. So I think it's harder, whether that's, changing, actually decreasing, like we're seeing more splits or short-term relationships. I don't know. And I also want to make sure that we're not sort of espousing to an ideology that says we have to be with a long-term relationship, someone for life, for us to be successful in relationships.
Interesting. Okay. In this age of DMs and constant connectivity, what is the meaning of emotional, emotional cheating, and how do you compare it to physical cheating?
It's a great question, actually, because I think historically, emotional cheating has been considered not that bad. Remember we talked about that betrayal trauma? And I have a very, clear opinion about this, that if you wouldn't do it, if you wouldn't engage in that type of banter, or you wouldn't be okay with your partner seeing those texts, you're in the realm of infidelity. You have stepped into that realm. There is another step into that realm through physical intimacy with another person outside of a committed relationship.
Yeah.
So if it's not okay with your partner, then you are engaging in an affair. And the communication piece, because for some relationships, like when we look at polyamorous relationships, that kind of open relationship requires really good communication.
Okay.
For it to be healthy. So again, your clue is when you're doing something secretively. When it becomes a secret, hiding, a stressor, and that communication isn't happening with your partner, you're stepping into an area that could harm them and harm yourself. Something to pay attention to. So I consider emotional cheating the same as physical cheating. Because, and some people, for some couples actually, and some, folks that I've worked with in my practice, it feels worse. The emotional part feels worse. And that's actually something, negotiated in open relationships. For some it's like the physicality is okay, but not the emotional. It can't be an ongoing, right? So it depends how, again, that's the value system within that relationship.
Interesting. And then, do you think in today's day and age, long-distance relationships could be possible?
For sure. It's going to go back to your communication, negotiation, right? What does this look like? How do we do this in a healthy way? So if you're, what couples often, I think, find themselves, and we see this a lot with migration, where one person comes, from the country of origin before the other, or there's residencies or different kind of, work-related or survival-related tasks that need to be done that create that long distance. So, and then there can be long distance by choice. The point is that it is about how you negotiate and figure that out together. So you can tumble your way along through that. Might be more stressful than if you say, like, how are we going to navigate a long-term relationship? What do I need? What do you need in terms of communication? What does intimacy look like? How's our finances in terms of being able to see each other? How much do we want to see each other? So with curiosity, compassion, and some logic in here,
Right.
Sure, why not?
Okay. Now, how does financial stress and career pressure affect someone's relationship today?
Well, I think it's one of those symptoms that we talked about. So when we look at all the domains, relationship satisfaction has a number of domains. And finances and career, that's a domain within ourselves as the individuals. Remember that?
Yeah.
Each individual. And then what does that look like in that middle space? So, financial pressures it's one of the top three. We look at, arguments and relationships. Risk factors are sex, finances, and children. So it's up there. And when there is financial stress, again, it's about instead of avoiding, how do we come together to talk about what, first of all, at an emotional level, what is the financial stress that we're experiencing like for you? We need to care about that.
Okay.
And we tend to, as couples, sort of talk about the logistics. Did you pay that?
One partner could be more financially savvy or stressed than the other partner.
Exactly. So similarly, like one person, that's a great point. Somebody is often holding the financial stressors. Somebody else might be holding the labor of the social, like engaging socially. Someone might be engaged more, their role might be more around the emotional labor in the relationship. Can we look at finances and career stressors and choices as if you can lead that discussion with the emotionality first? Curiosity, compassion, questions. How are you feeling in your career these days? What's it like for you? Does it feel like this is something you want to continue with? Like how loving is that? Let's go out for dinner, or let's go to the park and talk about how things are going. And somebody to lead that. And then vice versa, how's our financial life feeling? What are our goals? Like we often just sort of, I mean, I feel it too, raising 3 kids in the city. It's like we're tumbling along a lot of the time. And so not saving that conversation to tax time when it's going to be extra stressful.
Right.
What about doing that quarterly, where it's set in the schedule as part of that, healthy couple planning, and you're addressing that instead of letting that pressure build up, and it's part of disconnection. All that pressure underneath contributes to disconnection.
So a lot of it comes down to having those conversations, right, throughout the year.
That's right.
Okay, perfect. Now, what's your perspective on keeping love alive versus love fading away?
So you hear me talking a lot about prevention and through that early communication. So I think part of that, similarly to the finances, like it is going to be a natural skill for one person to be more financially literate and maybe another to be more emotionally literate. That's definitely how it is in my relationship. I'm more the emotional part, and he gets finances, thank goodness. Makes my brain hurt. So that's another piece to say, okay, what are the roles that we play in our relationship? And I'm holding a lot of, based on my constellation of who I am, maybe my ability to emote or bid for connection is easier for me. But I need you to bid for connection back with me. So it's, again, something really important to sit down and, maybe even quarterly. Maybe that's sort of the buzz for folks to start with, right? Just starting to engage in these domains and having these regular conversations. So how is our intimacy going? Does this feel like it's meeting the needs of each other? Because people really struggle to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's and that changes over the lifespan when we look at aging, right? Because those needs and abilities change over the lifespan as well. We look at, past 40. So those are conversations that we need to intentionally have with each other.
Okay.
And what does understanding your partner's needs and understanding your own needs, and then being able to figure out, okay, how do we engage in love together? What does that look like? Because again, Esther Perel talks about how we're going to have a window of time where it's hot and heavy and you're really excited about each other.
Yeah.
And then it's going to change. And what are the needs within that? So you can often have one partner that's still wanting that fireworks of love, kind of like what we see on The Bachelor, those kind of reality shows.
That's
where,
a bit much.
right, I'm going on a helicopter or getting swept away. So it doesn't mean that person's needs go away. She might, or they might say to their partner, I need you to sweep me away off my feet at least twice a year. Okay, there's a roadmap. And the other partner might be able to say, for me, gentle love means going for a walk on the beach with our dog. Or, having a conversation, just going out for a picnic. Something lower key, or when we have a snuggle on the couch and watch Netflix. So there is this concept of love languages, and those are great resources to use to start to, have those conversations. But it really is about the negotiation. And so much of it you can see in that third space, that middle space, is both people have to get on board and be, both actively working towards, what is it that you want love to look like in this relationship? What do you want finances to look like? Parenting and onwards, right? Relationships with extended family.
Great. This has been great so far, Angie. Any last piece of advice for our listeners?
Yes. I've really enjoyed what we've talked about, actually.
Yeah, so have I. It's been quite insightful.
Yeah, great questions. And, so needed. I think the way that you've explored the concept of relationships helps really be able to create flexibility for folks. And that's really what I hope the takeaway can be in terms of when we think about, the love we want, the relationships we want, and getting out of those perfectionistic, anxiety kind of focused brackets, right? Like I need to look a certain way. We need to look a certain way. We need to be a certain way. Let's start to chip away because, perfectionism and that anxiety is tending to come down through generations that are outdated. There's aspects of our family life and our generational life that we can shift. That's why, again, I say I do really love the situationship and the fluidity of relationships. So what I would say to couples is one of the things that's really important too is letting go of blame and shame. These are, factors that are really, really hard in a relationship. These are concepts and traits in a relationship that can, over time, really erode the love in a relationship. And it's hard not to, because we collect transgressions, and every relationship's going to collect trauma. So literally, when we looked at the attachment of our families, right, that there's going to be trauma and there's going to be gifts and love. There's also going to be trauma and gifts and love in a romantic adult relationship. And can we face it? So blame and shame, if you can see, like we say, you did this, right? Look how many fingers are pointing back at me.
Yeah.
Right? So let me look at us. Let's look at a situation and say, here's how I'm feeling, how you are impacting me. And here's maybe how I want to know how I am impacting you. So let's meet in that middle space. So, and the other piece, the most important, is please, 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 when there is conflict, there is going to be conflict. We want to move out of people pleasing and conflict avoidance. And as Canadians, we're super conflict avoidant. We're super nice. We like to keep things even keel. We like to be distinguished from our border towns. And you know what? We really need to embrace conflict and stress. And I'm not talking about abuse. I want to make that distinction. Right. Abuse is in its own, but stressors, arguments, conflict is okay. It's important to know when to walk away from that, to say, hey, time out, it's getting too heated. Please come back to that and learn about relationship repair. There's so much online. We can even put some links for your readers if you'd like to support around this concept of repair. And learn about your generational trauma. Learn about what's inside of you and what you're bringing to that middle space. Because everything can be healed. And I can say that's the greatest gift I feel this work has given me, and what I have espoused to as a wife and a mother and as a woman is to heal and do some learning, right? Just learning about generational trauma, just learning about where did I come from? What's my family lineage? What am I bringing? And really intentionally keeping those gifts, because there's so many gifts, and intentionally unlearning what's not working anymore, so that the relationship that my children see can be more of a template of what could be healthier. So I like to kind of just really, really noting for people, engage in conflict that's healthy, learn about that, learn about communication, deal with shame and blame, and really be able to look at, the most important ingredient is that repair. The other piece I want to leave people with is that we have changed in our approach with relationships, and to learn about that too, so that there's less stigma about a relationship ending. Sometimes that happens and that's okay. And learning about healthy endings, because that's also a form of repair. Not every relationship's meant to last over the lifetime, and that's okay. So being good to yourself, being good, compassionate, flexible, and compassionate with others is really important.
Perfect. This is great advice, Angie. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me, Manish. It was lovely.
Yeah, thanks. This episode of the Kapoor Podcast was proudly sponsored by Kapoor Law Firm and Kapoor Vastralia. If you are enjoying the show and want a one-time discount code, head over to our website, thekapoorpodcast.com, and fill out the form to receive your subscriber-only discount code. Whether you're looking for legal expertise or premium Indian ethnic wear, our sponsors have you covered. One more request to all of you, please do subscribe to the show and leave a comment to let us know what you think and how we can improve. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you in the next episode.